you're very sweet. You're very sweet. Because we've already done your Peugeot MI, haven't we?
Yeah. I was just with that a minute ago, actually. Looking at it, thinking, longingly waiting for the not too distant future when it's finished up and go and start terrorising the streets of Coventry with it again.
the mean streets of Cov.
Yeah, the mean streets of Cov.
Yeah. Which is where...
Should we leave the hat on, or should we take it off? What do you think?
Well, you're very much on brand, I think. So leave hat on. I can't see it. I can hear your voice. I can't see it. So it doesn't offend me.
Right. Well, you crack up. Well, what are you drawing first of all?
Well, I'm drawing. So I've done. I've already done the Austin classic cab. I've then done the new TX electric cab. And now I'm drawing the in-between one, which is the last of the diesel TX cabs, the TX4, which is also built in Cov. Much like you, because you are built in Cov, aren't you?
I am literally built in Cov. For those people that don't know me, which probably is quite a few of you, my name's Darren. I am born and bred in Coventry. I'm very pleased to be a citizen of this great city for reasons that escape me, to be honest with you. Certainly no sane reasons over the years. I always ended up kind of, no matter where I travel, no matter where I roam, I always seem to be flying the flag for this good city. So, so born and bred, lived here all kind of most of my life, apart from a few stints here, there and everywhere. I spend a bit of time kind of across Europe. I spend a bit of time, North America. I kind of run events, motorsporty things, generally just messing around on various racetracks in other people's cars, which is quite a good job, really. But I always come home to the mighty COV. Always back to the mighty Coventry. And also, as you can probably tell from the hat, I am one of the proud directors and volunteers for Coventry Motofest, which I know there's a few of you. I've just seen my nephew join down there, and he kind of travels all the way up from London to come to Motofest every year. And I know there's a fair few people out there that would certainly be aware of Motofest, but my involvement is mainly kind of limited to being a director, and I kind of deal with the noisy bits of the show. So I run the sprint circuit and help put that together, help deal with the licensing and financing and all the kind of stuff on that, which is a very kind of significant element of the show. I mean, it's anybody that hasn't been to Motofest, it's kind of like a moving motor show full of motorsporty stuff in an urban environment. So we have up to 1,000 classic cars on display. We have classic motorcycles, race motorcycles. We create a sprint circuit. We have live competitive motorsport on the city streets, as well as demonstrations, moving demonstrations of classic vehicles, competition vehicles, race trucks, motorbikes, jet cars, dragsters. The only things we haven't really done so far are probably big choppers. What do you say, Ian? Should we try and get a big chopper in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Do it. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, big choppers. Tanks. Tanks would be quite easy to get in, actually, but we've never done it yet. But we need to get some proper tanks in.
I mean, if there's one person who I know who's got tanks, we have a mutual friend who's got tanks called Tank Slider. Surely he can get hold of a tank.
Yeah. He can get tanks, and I think between him and a couple of his mates, we could probably get tanks and Sea Kings, and all sorts of stuff. I just don't really fancy repairing the road surface after we kind of do donuts with them on the track. But Coventry Motofest is a fantastic event. I mean, it's really caught the imagination of the city, really caught the imagination of people in the surrounding areas. And even nationally, it's just a fantastic thing. If you haven't been, you really, really ought to get to it. Last year, we had around 230,000 people turning up over the course of the weekend for this. So it's not a small gig at all. It's very family-friendly, outdoors, free to attend. Really, really great to be part of it. And I'm just one of, hundreds of volunteers that come together and make this amazing thing happen over the weekend. So Yeah, very proud to be part of it.
And
anyway, listen, I want to know, when you look at that blank piece of paper and then turn your head right to look at the image, what do you focus on first? Where is there a start point? Do you start like with the front of the car? Do you start with the face? Is there any particular? How does the process go? Very quickly.
Well, there's a basic outline of it. There we are. Does that look alright?
Do you start with the face, or do you start with the
I've started there.
silhouette? Or?
I started there. So I started there. Start the windscreen. Cars, you start the windscreen. Bikes are really tough. Bikes are much, much harder to do because the cars is what I do. So cars is. But yeah, you start there, and then you kind of once you've got because basically the bottom of that window there is kind of like you've got to make sure you've got proportionally you got that and that is pretty the same. So you've got to make sure that that's kind of in the middle-ish but a bit further over, and then you kind of work. Different cars work different ways. Like this is quite curvy, this car, so you kind of go up and then across and then and you are foreshortening it a little bit. So you're making it a little bit cartoony. So because the wheelbase and proportions wouldn't work, so you kind of squash it a little bit, and then you just but you always draw where you want to go to. You don't draw where the pen is, so you draw where the pen is going to, not where the pen is. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is number 301. So
see your stamina for this, I've got to say. We haven't actually had that much kind of and nobody has. Normally we see each other quite a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
Normally we will get together quite often for coffees, and we'll sit down and we'll break bread and kind of just go over what's going on in each other's lives. And I really like that, having somebody local who I can just drop in and have that kind of conversation with. We haven't had that over the last few weeks. I've just got to say, your stamina and kind of like drive to power through these drawings has been admirable. It's been astonishing, and I've really enjoyed watching the process and watching these drawings come to life in such a short space of time. But you're just powering through. It's incredible to watch, mate. Incredible.
You make me cry, mate. Don't say nice things. Say just It's I've really. Particularly finding out about how to do the joint feed and chatting to people. What I was missing most was chatting to people. When I do events, I talk to a lot of people. I see a lot of people. So I was like, well... And then I talked to a race driver called Toby Trice, who's a Ginetta driver. And he races for a really good reason. It's a charitable reason he races for. And he was like, oh, invite me into your live so I could talk about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you what? I was like, huh? And then he got involved, and I was like, this is brilliant. I can now have conversations with people that I've not met but have met at race circuits, and find out more about why they do it. And then obviously the whole, as we did more, was like, well, Taz was like, well, you can do a book out of this. You can make these into a collection of drawings.
Yeah, I've bought it.
You have, absolutely. So that's what it then became. I was like, actually, I want to create stuff that I would never normally paint because I've only got 52 weeks in a year to paint. I'm never going to paint 300 artworks. I'm never going to paint 300 artworks. I can only paint roughly 50 to 60 a year. So I was like, right, well, I would love to try as many things as possible. And then I've been lucky enough that London Taxi Company, or LEVC now, they got in touch and were like, we'd love to see our taxis done that way, because they saw it online and they wanted their cars done the same way. So
because I think not enough people, and no matter how many people appreciate it, not enough do appreciate it. Just how hard you work as a self-employed artist to keep your brand rolling, and how important that live event scene is to you and me in what we do.
Yep.
And without that, it's a proper challenge to keep the momentum going for the PopBangColour brand.
Yep.
Proper challenge. So that, you know, you kind of like embracing the whole social media, coming up with this whole concept, just to keep people engaged and, you know, kind of aware. And also, I've got to say, you know, you're driving to produce the book to kind of like generate a bit of revenue to live, you know, and people shouldn't lose sight of that as well. You know, yeah, we're buying you know, if you buy the book, and I'm sure if you hop onto Ian's, I would hope that it's on his profile,
through
to the project.
Yeah.
But you know, if you buy the book, you're getting much more than just a collection of images that you've drawn. In my mind, you're kind of like, you know, I'm helping a mate out in my own little way, the only way that I probably can. I'm helping you kind of like, you know, just maintain the momentum of your brand so that when everything lifts again, we can just hopefully start looking towards getting back to whatever the new normality is.
Yeah. Well,
the event industry, if anybody's watching it doesn't really appreciate fully, and I'm sure you do, but, you know, the hospitality and event industry is going to be the last section, the last sector that gets any kind of recovery out of this whole situation. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Yeah.
You know, and in the meantime, between now and then, people like you and I have just got to, I'm not going to say survive, because, you know, we're probably doing better than that, and there's probably people out there that are probably in a worse situation than we are, but, you know, our business kind of brands, respective brands, they have to be in the best possible shape that they can for when this whole thing starts to recover for these particular sectors.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know,
totally. And like you said, I mean, the thing is it's not just that. I mean, there's a huge amount of people who are all involved in that, where they're mechanics, employed in through events. There's a whole industry that is currently does not know what's going on.
No. I mean, you know, my normal track day business, where I've, as you know, organised the track days over at the Nurburgring, and I'm very blessed to be able to kind of make a modest living out of it. And it is a modest living, but, you know, it's a living nonetheless. You know, I'm pulling my hair out at the moment. You know, I am literally at the mercy of about 5 or 6 different countries' policies across Europe before I can even hope to get my customers access to some of the events. You know, we can't travel freely around Europe at the moment, quite rightly, given what's going on. And, you know, we have to wait. We have to be patient. We have to wait. But all the time, you know, we've got that pressure, haven't we, of kind of like just trying to keep people engaged and aware of what we do while we're not doing anything. And what you've done is incredible, because it's been engaging. I've loved sitting and watching what, you know, you create these artworks. Whether it's the one you did for me, or whether it's this taxi that you're doing for the light electric vehicle company, it was fantastic.
Cheers, buddy. It's but the thing is, for me, like, I was like, well, when lockdown was announced, I was like, I literally went down to the studio and just filled the car with as much stuff, because I knew that the biggest problem for me is that if I'm not creating, I can't cope. Like, it's and that's why my granddad built my first studio at my parents' house, because he was like, you can't create, can you? And I was like, no, I need to create. So even if I don't know what the end product is going to be or what I'm going to create, I needed space to create. So what Taz was like, right, you get the garage emptied. Yeah, one the Chevette.
That was the job, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the main thing in there wasn't there. The Chevette obviously isn't there. So that was a thing that isn't there. But yeah, so we kind of made the downstairs kind of the messy area for painting, and then the upstairs we made into a drawing and started to do some tutorials, because at that time with the kids off. Like the kids off school, we started to do a couple of tutorials and stuff, and that went quite interesting. But I'm not a born teacher. Like, my parents are born teachers. I'm not a born teacher. I can explain how I do things, but I'm quite rigid in that way, in many ways. Yeah. So, and then I started to draw. I drew the new Land Rover. And then people were like, "Oh, how about draw this and draw?" And quite quickly it became a thing. And I thought, well, actually, that's what I can do. That's what I'll do. And they've gone quite nicely.
Nice. I like it. I love it. You know, and it's nice to see your little chubby little cheeks as well. You're not losing any weight. You're not doing any exercise, are you?
No, you're right.
Go outside, you know.
You
are allowed outside and do some exercise.
Oh, but that means I can't draw outside, doesn't it?
Yeah, I spent the whole day. Have you been out? Have you been anywhere? Like seriously?
Ish.
Like, I mean, if you're anything like the majority of people that have had to stay at home or been able to stay at home or whatever, I guess you would have been to a supermarket and that's about it.
I sent Az.
You sent us. I spent the whole day out yesterday in the big wide world. I helped Mission Motorsport move a load of cars for Mazda UK, who were donating some vehicles to Team Rubicon, who are supporting local authorities with the COVID-19 responses, whether it be moving stuff, moving people, or assisting in, you know, like quite a few of them are assisting in temporary morgues, which was quite sobering to listen to. But we needed to shimmy up to Worcester and pick these cars up, and then I had to take it down to Gillingham in Kent, which was, you know, quite a day out, to be honest with you. So I've spent the full day out on the highways and byways of this wonderful country of wonderful Great Britain. And do you know what? The world's still turning out there. And this is going to sound ridiculous to all people that are watching that have had to work and have still been going about their normal business, whether they be, you know, engineers or key workers or whatever. But it was quite emotional. It was quite enjoyable to, you know, have that feeling that actually I'm doing what I used to do, going around the country, driving around, and things are still functioning, and there are people still out there and who have just had this normality that has been going on all the while. So it's kind of nice to get out and see a bit more of it, and it gives me, or it gave me certainly last night, a lot more positivity about where we could possibly end up coming out of this. There's a few comments, there's a few people joined, you know, and watching this. There's a few comments as well.
Are they nice comments?
Quality, somebody called Quality something 01, I'm not going to repeat it. He wants to know if I've driven around the Nurburgring. Yes, once or twice. He wants to know what the best car I've done it in.
Well, I think we need to explain. I think we need to explain what you do, like what ring. So this is I want you to plug what you do, because you are honestly, like, you're the nicest guy I know. You've helped me out so many times. I ring you up and go, Darren, I've got this. But you are one of the nicest guys in the car industry, because you're always willing to help, and that, I think, that comes because of the job that you do, which is organise. Yeah, you run Destination Nurburgring, and you've been doing that for 10 years now. 10
years, yeah, some anniversary, eh?
But so explain, like, how did that happen? Like, how did you end up doing that as a gig as such?
So I always, I kind of, living in Coventry, it's probably no surprise to you to learn that my kind of parentage was motor industry led. My grandfather was a motor engineer, and my father was a motor engineer, and he did his apprenticeship at Roots Group. When it was Roots, that then obviously morphed into Hillman, then Chrysler, then Talbot, then Peugeot Talbot, and my dad then retired from Peugeot, so he stayed with the company essentially all the way through. But I've always had an interest in cars, always been involved in motorsport, interested in motorsport, and then, you know, we'd always get together and watch the Formula One races, and we'd come together and have a, you know, if it was a morning race, we'd have a breakfast, or if it was an evening race, we'd have a couple of drinks, and just, there was a group of us that used to really enjoy watching motorsport, as many people do. And then we decided that we got a bit more bored of watching it, and decided that we wanted to start doing it, and got got involved in track days, and we were just customers at the beginning, and really enjoyed the whole kind of, getting out onto circuits and driving cars at speed legally, which is quite liberating the first few times you do it. And then, just ended up kind of helping out a few track day organisers, and then it kind of morphed into the first time we ever went to the Nurburgring was in a caterum. My brother and I went camping at the ring and drove all the way there in a caterum with our tent and a spare pair of boxer shorts and a toothbrush in the back of a caterum, which I don't know if, for those of you who don't know what caterums are, they're basically just very small, kind of very, very small cars with no luggage space. And we drove around the Nurburgring just as tourists for the first time and got completely hooked. Came home and I had to figure out a way of going back to learn that circuit. Having done lots of tracks in the UK and, mastering them, you're suddenly faced with this challenge of a magnitude you've never seen before. And I just needed to fund going back, because it's not cheap. Going to the Nurburgring, driving the Nurburgring is not cheap by any measure. You think about the time off work you need, the ferry crossings, your hotels, your food, your fuel, tyres, brakes, other mechanical issues, just to get a car to the Nurburgring, around the Nurburgring and back from the Nurburgring is not cheap, even if you're doing it on a shoestring. So I started a small company up that then, at the time, just took groups of people over, and I'd book the ferries and I'd book the hotels, and I would lead people over in a convoy over to the Nurburgring, look after them, made sure that, to the best of my ability, that they didn't kill themselves or kill anyone else, that they didn't, if they had a problem mechanically, then I knew the people locally that could help them. And I did that for probably the best part of 6-7 years. And it was never going to make me rich. It was always a side hustle, until the point where I just basically bet the farm on going large, on renting a whole circuit privately, and managed to kind of wheedle my way in front of the management of the Nurburgring, asked the question. They said yes, it's going to cost you this much. I gulped a lot. And came back and managed to raise. I had to pay 50% of the track hire up front, which was, we're talking tens of thousands. Ended up having to kind of like raise the money by hook or by crook, and then from then on didn't really look back. So we had a lot of people support it over the years. And this year was supposed to be the 10th anniversary of the track days. And I've got loads of stuff planned in. It was so nice. We've got loads of really cool stuff planned, and merch, and just supposed to be a real celebratory year, but that just wasn't going to happen. I think a lot of people on New Year's Eve, as that clock struck on New Year's Eve, and everyone was like, yay, bouncing around, merrily chinking glasses and looking forward to what 2020 was going to bring. How little did we know? I know. Yeah. How little did we know?
Like rewind. Well, randomly, I was on the top of Mount Fuji on New Year's Eve. So yeah, it was like you say, it's like none of us could have predicted. I think the first kind of sense of it was when the Geneva Motor Show got cancelled, like a day before it was due to open. Yeah. And I think that kind of set the tone after that, really. It was like, if that can get cancelled, anything can. So it's yeah, and
we were basically just reacting from that point onwards, weren't we?
Yeah.
And certainly in the event industry, it's just driven a freight train straight through the middle of it. It's just been horrendous. We took the decision. We were watching, in terms of Motofest, we were watching events unfold, and obviously as it was becoming clearer to us that the health threat of this infection, of this kind of pandemic, was the key thing that was going to drive the shape of whatever events are going to look like. And as it became clearer to us that possibly having up to over 100,000 people a day in the centre of Coventry was going to be impossible. It was just not going to happen. It wouldn't be safe. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. It would, for all sorts of reasons. So it was at that point that, you know, when we made that decision to postpone this year's event and just push it forward to 2021, that was the point when it was like, right, okay, this is going to have like massive effects throughout the whole industry, and so it's actually proven to be. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the Nurburgring stuff, I've had to cancel one event. The first event, which we should have been running last Friday at the Nurburgring. I was so sure that we were going to get away with it. I was so sure that, you know, we were going to sneak in and be able to run it. But with all of the kind of local restrictions in Germany, it wasn't possible to run on the Friday, but it was possible for the first event to run the following Monday. So we were so close. Not that it would have made any difference here to us in the UK. We would not be able to travel. Tourism, you know, we can't get across borders with any clear conscience at the moment. It would have been possible. You know, we could all sneak through with various justifications about how to travel from the UK through France, through Belgium, into Germany, and to cross those borders, you know, but it wouldn't be morally it wouldn't be the right thing to do, given the efforts that countries and societies are trying to go to get a grip on this thing. So I was a bit gutted that we couldn't run, but I didn't get to kind of like celebrate the 10th year with this big kind of wow experience that I'd got planned. But my next event for the Nurburgring is in mid-July. And, you know, I've got to be reasonably confident that the news I heard yesterday from the EU that says that they want to kind of synchronise the lifting and restart the tourism industry, and they're all going to start looking at it closely from like the 15th of June onwards. That kind of gives me some hope that we possibly are going to be able to at least drive into Europe by the middle of July, which, if it does happen, it'll be good news. If it doesn't, then, you know, we'll just have to manage it as best we can. You know, we're all in the same storm. We're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. So, you know, I'm sure that we just have to kind of get through it.
So just going back to Motofest, and because this is the only closed road competitive event there is, you know, in a non kind of circuit environment, isn't it?
It's the first urban, like city centre legal motorsport, and it's important to make that difference. You know, there's demonstrations that have been run in city centres with all sorts of stuff, but for actual legal sanctioned motorsport, it's the first city centre motorsport to happen since the late 80s, mid-late 80s, which was the Birmingham Super Prix. Since the Super Prix stopped running, there has been no motorsport in England on city streets. You do get closed rally courses and timed rallies on rally stages, which comes under some very, very strict legislation. And all the cars are road legal. Obviously, rally cars, as you know, rally cars are fully road legal and fully insured. But they are competition cars. So there's differences between rallying and like circuit racing or sprinting that are quite marked. So it was a proper challenge. You know, if I sat you down and told you the years of work that it took to get a circuit legalised by the governing body of motorsport in the UK, it was literally probably about 5 years of my life of working on it week in, week out to get that legislation in place to make that happen. It was an immense effort, and I was so proud when we managed to do it, and I was massively proud that Coventry was the first city in the UK to do it, and I'm pretty sure that we're still the first city centre to have ever done it since the introduction of some new legislation back in 2010, really. that the legislation was talked about being introduced, and it finally made it into law in 2015, and we were the first city centre to take advantage of it. And as far as I know, we're still the only city centre to actually take advantage of it. So Coventry, we need to be quite proud of that. That's quite some achievement.
But you were, I think credit to you. You are the driving force behind it, and and I think the thing is, if you haven't been to Cov, to essentially shut down half the ring road is, if you came to the city, that is the most bizarre thing to try and actually do.
Yeah, we raised a few eyebrows. Let's put it that way.
Because it's just,
You're right, because it is the kind of the key part of the road infrastructure of the city. It's literally the epicentre. You take the ring road out, and then everything would normally just fall over.
Yeah. In
terms of people being able to get around, so we raised a few eyebrows, but we managed to come up with a design that kind of still allowed people to get around the city, and that was important, because if we were going to have this thing accepted by not just the Coventry City Council, not just the governing body of motorsport in the UK, but also the people of Coventry as well need to accept it. Otherwise, there was just no point. But to do that, we needed to come up with a good design for the circuit that still allowed us to do what we wanted, but still kind of allowed the city to function. So it's all about kind of minimising disruption, minimising inconvenience, and I'm not going to say it's perfect, but we've got a really good balance between the inconvenience factor and the acceptance factor from the people of Coventry that managed to kind of take it to heart and really get behind it. Because if they hadn't, and if we were dealing with a tsunami of complaints every year, then we would very quickly kind of get the message that we weren't wanted or we weren't loved, and we would stop. We would, there's no point in kind of being that obtuse and that much of a pain to people that they just end up resenting us, and people are going to try and spit at me on the street as I walk around. The people of Coventry have really taken it to their hearts and really supported the event, and they've given us the drive to carry on doing it, because it takes a lot of time, and everybody involved in putting it on is a volunteer. And it's nice. It gives you that warm glow to see on the weekend. In the run up to the event, it's an absolute nightmare. It's you're not surprised I'm this grey under this hat, because the amount of stress that we're all under. And then you get to showtime and the day one of the event, and the city centre fills up, and everybody's smiling. And there's a real buzz in the city centre, a fantastic buzz. And you just, every now and again, I'll just allow myself a little moment where I'll just stand still in the middle of all the madness, take a little breath, have a little moment, look round, have a little smile, and then crack on. Because it's the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. Outside of becoming a father, and managing to marry the woman I love, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Highly recommend it. If you do have the means, organise your own motorsport event in your own city. It's fantastic.
And then that also led to things like stuff happening at Fargo where I'm based. We came up with an idea of an event, and that's now kind of gone on to take its own life in terms of the Dub Club and whatnot as well. But without your kind of guidance of experience of events, certainly that wouldn't have happened. So I think the motoring the motoring and event side of the Cov is certainly a big thank you to you from a fan of it, but also a friend, to say you do a sterling job to make it all happen.
Well, I think you're being a bit too generous there, but but thank you anyway.
That's all right. So when you're not playing around with race cars, you also have a penchant for 205 GTIs.
I have a quantity of 205 GTIs. What are you saying?
I'm just saying that's another string to your bow of what's what's happening there, and what your plans are?
Dad worked for Peugeot. I said that earlier on. I sometimes struggle to kind of like work out how he managed it, but somehow he always used to end up on a Friday afternoon with a pre-launch, pre-production version of whatever the next new thing was, and a fuel card. And all we knew was that my dad we'd get him from school at 3:30 on a Friday. Mum would be shouting at us, "Your dad's got a car! Your dad's got a car! Get your pajamas on! You're going out!" And like 3:30, what? And she'd chuck some food in us. My dad would walk through the door about 4:45. He would eat something, and then we would jump in these cars, and we'd have to put 1,000 miles on them before they'd be back in the factory Monday morning. And then they used to give them a quick service at the factory, then they'd be off to whatever magazine to get road tested. So my dad used to turn up with pre-production, pre-launch cars of whatever it was, and we used to basically just run them in so that they were in the best shape they could be for when they were going off to be tested or whatever it would be. So I spent my kind of formative years, pre-driving license years, kind of just shunting around the country in Peugeots, 505 GTIs, 405 SRIs, 405 MI16, 205 GTs, GRs, diesels, GTIs, you name it. So, that era of car built, the 405 certainly was built in Coventry. 309s were built in Coventry. 206s were built in Coventry. All the Hillman stuff that went before it, it's just ingrained into me, I think. And I've got a very strong affinity with those kind of cars. And as I've got older, I've been lucky. I had a 405 MI16 that basically helped me start my business, and that I've kept because I love it. It's like a faithful old dog that you just ought to, really kind of put out of its misery some years ago, but it's still hanging on in there. And as a result, I decided I was going to rebuild that, which I've just come into the end of that process. But yeah, the 205s, it just seems like, I don't know if you've noticed, or anyone that's watching has noticed, the value of certain classic cars has just gone a bit mental over the last few years. And there's been certain things, external things that happen to the classic car market, like the scrappage scheme, that a lot of these cars, like 205 GTIs, were worth nothing. You'd buy and sell them. You'd buy one for 500 quid on a Friday afternoon and blow it up on a Saturday, and then just go and buy another one, for a couple of hundred quid and just replace it. They're worth nothing. And a lot of them were either written off, abused, scrapped, crashed, or whatever. Scrappage scheme that came in, the last recession, or I think it was 08, wasn't it?
08, yeah.
Scheme.
Yeah.
And that was criminal, really, because a lot of classic cars that should have really survived that ended up being just wasted and chopped in against deposits on whatever new bland box thing it was that people were looking to take advantage of and buy. And yeah, I can understand economically why they did it, but we find ourselves in a situation where a lot of these cars from our youth, not that long ago from our youth, are suddenly incredibly rare, and the prices have gone nuts. And so I thought I always wanted like a 205 GTI to kind of like keep, a nice little one just for me to keep. So ended up buying about 10 of them while there were hundreds. And these cars, they've probably been around the block, but they're all, I like the old ones, I like the early ones. The 205 GTI launched in May of 84 in the UK. Or was it March, something like that, March, April, May 84 in the UK. And I like 1984, 1985, early 205s. So I bought about 10 of them while there were hundreds. And now it seems that, any 205 that's in any reasonable condition is going for between £10,000 and £40,000, which is just incredible. So I've currently got a storage unit that I keep the race car in, and I keep a lot of the event stuff in, but tucked away in there's a few of these old 205s that at some point we have started to like refurbish and restore them, and we're just going to work through them and just give them a new lease of life. But I do like old Peugeots. I've got a bit of a thing for old French things, to be honest with you.
Because I didn't know that the same engine in the MI is the same engine in a BX GTI.
Yeah, PSA only put that engine into 3 cars, the production engine into 3 cars, which was the 405 MI16. This is the Phase 1 cars, and the Citroen BX 16 valve, and they also put it into the French. It was only a French domestic market only, a 309 GTI 16. So that aluminium block engine that was in my car, the car that you know, was only ever in 3 production vehicles, and not many produced of those, really, to be honest with you, because as you might know, if you know anything about Peugeots, those cars were scrapped quite a lot for the engines, and the engines used to end up in a lot of 205s because it was a great swap, and the engines more or less dropped straight in. So the survival rate of like the 405s and the Citroen BXs, etc., are stupidly low, like incredibly low, like down into the teens. Really, if I'm being honest, about cars in the UK, 405 MI16s that I know in the UK that are on the road, we're talking 15-ish, maybe less. I think that I only know of like one other 1990 car that's on the road, apart from mine that will be. I know a few that are being restored, but not many. Whereas 205s now, nobody wants to let go of the 205 they've got, because now that everybody's looking to put a bit of time and effort into restoring them, because people are willing to pay big money for the 205s in a way that they're not for necessarily for other old Peugeots. So yeah, that engine, actually the engine in the 405 MI16 can trace little bits of its lineage back to the XU8 engine that powered the 205 Turbo 16 rally car and the 405 Turbo 16 rally cars as well. Yeah, so there's parts of the cylinder head design and stuff like that that can kind of trace the lineage between the two. So that's the story I always like to tell as well. But yeah, it's a rare old thing, that 405 Coventry built MI16. It's coming, like I say, coming to the end. All I really need to do is put the interior back in it. It's going to be one of the best, if not the best, that I'm aware of in the world, I think, to be honest. The work that's done on it and the standard, it's going to be one of the cleanest cars. Certainly not one of the original, because not one of the most original, because we've upgraded bits and bobs because I like using it. But it's certainly one of the most complete, solid, best finished, kind of nicest ones that's going to be out there.
And it does look awesome. And so, in terms of finished, I think I'm pretty much there. There is, I think, just making sure, there is a... So in terms of your track day, where can people... Obviously, Ring Weekends on the Instagram, so where can people interact, find out more, get in touch? Where can people do that?
Well, the website is dnevents.com. So it's dnevents.com. I'm on Twitter as @ringweekends. I'm on here as @ringweekends, as you can see. And that's pretty much it. If you want to find us on Facebook, it's Destination Nurburgring Trackdays. And yeah, you can kind of if you've got if you want any information, or if you've got any questions about anything Nurburgring, Spa, or anything UK circuit related, just hit me up on one of those. I'm always happy to talk about driving around in circles with no end point. That does look quite nice. That.
There we are.
Beautiful.
There is.
Beautiful.
A Coventry built taxi. There we are.
I'll read.
There we are. So, thank you so much, Darren, for jumping in there, because we were having some technical issues. So, it's been awesome to chat to Coventry lad whilst creating another Coventry legend, you see. So, there you are. There's the new one, and there's the old one. There's a nice trio of
beautiful.
Okay. So, awesome. Well, hopefully we'll catch up properly soon at some point. in a probably social distancing way. But thank you, mate. Really, really cool. And I hope you like the taxi. And
I love it.
I'll speak to you soon.
Take it easy. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Darren.